Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Data and Analytics Strategy webinar. I'm your host, Justin Barr, the CTO and co-founder at Clear Process Solutions. I'm joined by Amii Lang from Heinen, who has agreed to share their data and analytics journey. Welcome, Amii.
Thank you, Justin.
At CPS, we host these webinars to share real-world experience and have a unique format to making sure we get the whole story. Amii will be covering the beginning and challenges Heinen has faced with their data and analytics. Next, she'll cover the tipping point and what has set them on their path to the new beginning. Lastly, I'll cover how Heinen and CPS has partnered for their data and analytics roadmap. At the end of the webinar, we will have a wrap up, answer any questions that you've typed into the Q&A panel, and if you don't know who CPS is, you're welcome to stay a little bit longer and we'll give you an overview of our company. We hope through today's webinar that you learn from Amii and Heinen how they started their data and analytics journey, as well as understand the importance of building a data and analytics roadmap. Let's go ahead and get started and talk about some of the common challenges that we're seeing companies face for the data and analytics space. These challenges range from understanding where to start with data and analytics, the cost and the benefits of data and analytics and formulating a strategy, and as well as what it takes to build a roadmap for data analytics that makes sense for your organization. We want you to know that you're not alone, and hopefully through today's webinar, you learn a little bit from Amii and her team of how they've started down their journey. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Amii to introduce herself and Heinen.
Thanks again, Justin, and appreciate being invited to join and talk a bit about Heinen's journey and the partnership that we have with CPS. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Amii Lang. I'm the Director of E-commerce and Loyalty at Heinen. And for those of you that don't know Heinen, we are a family-owned business located in the greater Cleveland and Chicago areas. Cleveland and greater Chicago's premier grocery store, in fact. We've been around since 1929. We are in our 91st year of business this year, and we are actually a third and fourth owned generation business. That's really rare for companies to last generally to the third and fourth generation. Family-owned businesses rarely make it that far, and in fact, family-owned businesses lasting to the fourth generation only represent about 3% of businesses that start out as family-owned. We know that our associates are our greatest asset in providing world-class customer experiences, both in-store and online to our customers. And we have associates that span our individual stores, 23 of them, as I mentioned earlier, as well as our main office. And we have also warehouse, manufacturing, and distribution centers. I've been at Heinen for 3.5 years and have worked on a variety of initiatives here, all of which are really heavily based in data. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about our journey associated with data, particularly in some of the challenges that we experience. And I'm sure many of you work at companies where you have challenges with your data as well. So let me give you a little bit of background on those specific challenges. Overall, and after a lot of work, we basically aligned our challenges to 5 major areas, and I'm going to talk a little bit in detail about these specific areas. The first area we're summarizing in the lack of streamlined data visibility across the organization. So for those of you data experts out there, right now, the methodology that Heinen uses to access most data, including product and customer and sales data, is through a methodology called cubes. And the cubes that we use are a little bit clunky. They were developed over 10 years ago. They require some really in-depth knowledge of how to access the data in order to get the right information out of them. And they have a lot of different filters that need to be applied into the cubes in order to pull back data appropriately. For other types of data, they're all in different sources outside of the cubes. So let's say I want to get some information about our website and traffic associated to the website. That doesn't live in cubes, it lives in a separate data source. And maybe I want to get some information around the performance of individual promotions that can live in a few different data sources. And you can see with the increase in data sources to get at this information, it's a little more complex to get at what you actually need when it comes to solving the questions that you maybe are trying to get some answers to. With a cube solution, what we have found is that the solution itself is a little too complex for the layman and not complex enough for a detailed data scientist. And so for those of us that really need to investigate and find out root causes, like some team members on my team, the cubes just don't provide the level of detail that we're trying to get to. And for those team members that are just trying to get quick answers and find out quick trends as it relates to their element of the business, the cubes aren't fast enough and aren't easy enough to get at those individual pieces of information. Another challenge that we see when it comes to this visibility is that there are many team members that are not sure where to go to find information in the cubes. They don't necessarily know even how to ask the right question. They might be utilizing filters incorrectly and getting at some wrong conclusions because they are using an intuitive approach as opposed to relying on someone else for support. So overall, it's tough. It's tough when there is data in many sources. The data is tough to access and it's not intuitively found for team members across the company. That really leads into our second major challenge, which is that we have really complex data processes that not only build our cubes, but integrate elements from the cubes and other sources to provide insights to the business. And a lot of that burden sits on the IT team. This is the team that holds access to information, provides access to the right people across the company based on their role, and creates the individual data pools when information doesn't necessarily exist in our cube solution. And so that reliance on IT puts a lot of stress on the team, particularly when individual data elements are needed for various projects across the company. And it leads to the creation of shadow IT groups throughout the organization. And I'm guilty of this myself. I don't sit in IT, but I have definitely created my own databases with data feeds that I've pulled from other sources and maintained them on my own not because I don't trust the work that IT does or I don't see them as a valuable partner, but it's because they are so busy and they will not have time to support my needs in the way that I require to complete my job. So a little bit easier to do it on my own, create something off to the side that now, unfortunately, only I can see. Maybe there's inaccuracies in the data and it might not match data that's reported elsewhere. I think that part of what happens with these complex access issues and the creation of shadow IT across the organization is that there's data quality concerns that fall out from reporting that comes out of these separate databases. If you think about maybe a number that I'm reporting that is on customer satisfaction and it doesn't necessarily match a number that is reported elsewhere in customer satisfaction because that is coming from a true data source as opposed to a created data source that I've developed, I think that that puts a lot of distrust in the data across the organization. And we don't want that ever as team members that deal with data all day long. Trust in data is paramount. I think that across the organization, our third challenge is really understanding from a business perspective and utilizing our data. What is the company-wide standard for our key performance indicators? And this will help develop consistent goals as well if we have this in place. And I'm not saying we don't have key performance indicators. We have a lot of them. The key performance indicators that exist for some stores might be different than a set for other stores, and they might be measured in a different way from store to store. And so I think what really we're seeking out is to have standardization across the company and create that institutional understanding of what we are all working toward here. Overall, some departments may be sales focused for a month, some departments may be margin focused for a month, and some might be dollar profit focused for a month. And those are different goals. We're all basically getting at the same thing at the end of the day. We want our business to be healthy and we want to succeed. And we want to do that while providing that world-class customer experience. But without the standardization, people are holding themselves accountable to different sets of goals. And so I think having that agreement and setting benchmarks hasn't happened because our data access is tough. The visibility is hard to create and a little bit poor, and we don't necessarily have the best solution in place to enable measurement. Continuing on from a challenge perspective, I think that one thing I noticed when I started working here a few years back and I started to familiarize myself with the data was that I didn't really know what all of the fields meant. And what was my first task was to go find a data dictionary or a data mapping or a field mapping. And instead of being handed maybe a large tablet, a printout, or maybe some old school binders, what I was told to do was to go talk to a person. And that's really the approach here when it comes to definitions of data. It is a who you know approach. And if the institutional learning associated with those data definitions is consistent, that can work in some places. But when we have different parts of the business utilizing the same name for different measurements, this can sometimes create a little bit of confusion and reference to different data under the pretense that it's the same data. Let me walk you through an example. We're in a retail industry, and something that's extremely important to us is cost. And we get products in every single day, and cost can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. One department, when they talk about cost, might be referring to a case cost associated to a weighed product that is shipped into us and is delivered once a week. And that case cost changes every single week. Another department might be referencing an average cost of an individual product item over the past 52 weeks. And another department, yet again, may be referencing the net cost of a product after all promotion offsets are taken into account. And they're all referring to different measurements at the end of the day, but everybody is using the same terminology to refer to these measurements, and the terminology is cost. And so when a report comes out and the report has a measurement associated with cost and cost reduction, team members are taking away different meanings of that variable. It's not matching other reports that they're seeing that looks at their specific variable. And then guess what? We have back to our initial problem, mistrust in the data. Oh no, we don't want that. Knowing the data as it makes sense to you is great in helping you do your own job, but organizationally, we need to understand what are the true pieces of data that people are using to make those decisions and start to get them using the right language associated with their data elements. I think our last challenge, and a lot of me talking here right up top, I do realize that, so appreciate your patience, is that we really have a strong desire across the organization for data literacy. And what I mean there is we're in an industry, in an organization that has been around for 91 years. And if you look back a couple of decades, we didn't have all of this data. And decisions were really made with handshakes and gut feel. And as we transform and move forward over the past couple of decades, we have relied more and more on data science, and data elements for improved decision making. Our team members want to move away from these gut decisions that they are making and move to informed decisions that they can make based on real, trustworthy data. I think that as an organization, we want to stop looking at our historical data and say, this happened, and we want to empower our team members to understand where to go to answer the question, why did this happen? And the need is out there. Our team members are craving this. There is a consistent increase in the number of visualizations, dashboards, and new types of reports that are coming from our organization. And they're really overtaking the set of historical reports that have gone out in terms of actionability. And the solution we have in place right now just isn't going to do it for us. So that was a lot of challenges and a good history about Heinen's. And I don't want to, before we move on, leave anyone with the impression that we don't have the tools to do our job, because we do. We could have such better tools to do our jobs so much better. And I think that's what we really are understanding here as a company. And it really brings us to our tipping point. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that tipping point and talk a bit about how we're moving past it. I've talked a bit about our challenges and a bit about our data organization and a bit about the desires from our team members. And I want to be clear, it's not that we haven't tried to solve this on our own before. We've tried some small implementations in one part of the business for some new tooling. Every time that we've taken these efforts on, we've basically taken a small segment of the business and tried to shove in a solution that worked for that side of the business. And because this was run not holistically across the organization, because this was run with only maybe one part of the business making the decisions on a new tool set, this never really failed. We didn't have the strategic approach across the entire organization to support a project like this. So we were really setting ourselves up for failure from the beginning. Moving to a point where we knew we needed to make this a strategic project really has opened up all of our eyes. It's really allowed us to think about this differently and plan for the future. And what I will say is that it also required buy-in across the entire organization, because this isn't a project that can be run by just a couple of people that use the data a lot alone. This is something that you need to have buy-in from your IT team, your finance team, your HR team, everyone working out at the stores, operations, manufacturing. Across our entire organization, we need to have support for this change, because if we don't agree as an entire group on what our goals are and where we're moving to, this won't succeed. And, you know, for us, it finally hit the point we said, we've got to stop saying we'll do this next year or next fiscal year. We've got to do it now. Our associates really desire this change. And I like to use this phrase that I've heard someone in our senior leadership team say, we need to stop kicking that can down the road, and let's deal with it right now. Overall, I think that it's important to understand where we're moving to here. and talk about all of the reasons why we are making this change, okay? So we know what the change has to be, but understanding the why behind this change is going to add all the meat to the decision making as we move forward that is necessary. So let's talk about our overall goals moving forward. We have our why elements here are to, none of these will surprise you based on some of our challenges, but align our data and analytics to our business goals and objectives. I think that makes sense. Make more informed decisions based on data, and those more informed decisions should be coming from all levels of the organization. They are coming from associates that are checking on their stock availability at our store level. They are coming to our senior most leaders at the company as they look at long-term trends in company performance. Overall, better access to data and better data tooling will allow us to make better informed decisions. I think that access is key. We need access that works for both our super users and data scientists, as well as for our non-technical users. And we need this to work on a platform that makes sense for the end user. We need to get away from a solution that doesn't work for everyone because we tried to split the difference. And then I think also we know that our company is changing every single day. We are continuing to build out new technology infrastructure, and we really need to create a solution that is scalable for us long term. What we built over 10 years ago was really good then, and now it doesn't work for us anymore. So what can we build now that will help us last well into the future? With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Justin to talk a bit about our engagement.
Excellent, and thank you, Amy, for sharing your story and some of the challenges that you faced in that tipping point. And it's always important to align on the why, because as we say, if you know your why, your what and how has more meaning. Before diving into the Heinen's engagement, we had a question come across that maybe I can have you address now. So the question comes from James. He says, was the creation of Shadow IT Group due to being underserved or lack of resource available?
I think it's both of those things. And I think that having team members in a department that is extremely strapped, that deals with all issues as they arise, does create a bit of resource constraint. I think when you look at a team of developers that is small to support data initiatives, and you have a team of people outside of IT who also have some of those skills, it naturally sometimes falls into a situation where you're just moving along and doing some of that on your own. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a combination of both. I don't want to leave any impression that there is any sort of knowledge gap with our IT team. They are amazing. They support us when it comes to any data need that we have. I think that they are supporting a huge amount of asks all the time, and that is where some of the limited availability comes from.
Yep. We've certainly seen that across a lot of different organizations. You know, IT has dwindled over time. You know, operating budgets get cut, and so does a lot of the different things that they have as far as resources. And so IT teams are focusing on whatever they can do to keep the lights on, and sometimes the strategic initiatives don't lend itself very well to resource availability. All right, well, thanks James for your question. If any other people on the phone have questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A panel, and we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. All right. So what I'm going to talk about is the Heinen's engagement at a high level, how we partnered with Heinen's to really understand what their challenges are and what they were facing with data and analytics. So, you know, when we talk about the phase one of this project, it was all around understanding the strategy of the company and what they were looking to do for their data and analytics. And certainly making data an asset and making informed based decisions versus gut feel are all things that they were looking to do from a strategy perspective. We also, being new to Heinen CPS and our partnership, we had to understand and go back to the beginning, understand their current state, what they've tried in the past, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And then as we started to understand the intelligence kind of from their team, we started really looking at what they needed as far as an organization and what that roadmap would look like. From our engagement perspective, it was all around interviewing a lot of different associates, about 40 or about 77 different associates throughout their organization at every different level, from the president and CEOs, the CFO, all the way down to the department store level, even in the warehouse and distribution and manufacturing center. And as we conducted our interviews, we kind of had our standard format where we had our data architect ask a lot of the questions to one or many associates. There could be one associate in an interview, or there could be up to 6. And we always had a note taker there that was taking the raw notes, because if someone's kind of formulating and listening and asking the question, somebody needs to take the raw notes. There were about 5 to 15 different interview questions that were based on the role that you had in the organization, so that we could go learn a little bit more about how you use data and what tools you were using. And there were roughly 7 organizational assessment questions, because we wanted to get an understanding organizationally, how do the associates feel about data quality or data access or data maturity or data governance. And then we asked 2 to 3 wildcard questions, and we specifically put these in the interviews because interviews can be grueling, as anybody that's ever done a job interview. And we don't want these interviews to feel like you're being interviewed for a job. It needs to feel very open and relaxed. And so wildcard questions, although being a little off by asking, what superhero do you think you are within your organization, or what's your favorite team, and where do you play, what position would you play on that team? They actually did we gained some pretty knowledgeable insight from the associates as they were talking about their role or their superhero as it related to their organization there at Heinen's. And then we leverage and have been trained the art of listening. And when you think about interviews and you think about sticking to a script, there's only so much time. And sometimes if you're just sticking to the script, then you're only getting the questions that you ask and not the in-depth detail by listening and really paying attention to what the person really wants to say to you as it relates to the initial question that you asked. So sometimes we didn't get through all of the questions during the interviews, but we just gained a lot more insight by continuing down the conversation. How the interviews, we consolidated all the interview notes into a framework that we've created called CPS Sync. And this is kind of an evaluation criteria that we really fully understand Heinen's data and analytics needs. And we categorized our different findings into 4 main areas, and that's strategy, intelligence, needs, and culture. And it's certainly, each one of these are important for your organization to help formulate a roadmap of where your organization's going, because culture being one of those big portions that, depending on your culture, you may have different roadmap. You may have a different roadmap than Heinen's, depending on your strategy. And currently, some of the tools that you have throughout your organization, you could have a different roadmap than what was developed for Heinen's. So when we looked at Heinen's and we formulated all of our different findings, really what the desire at Heinen's was an easier access to data. As Amii had mentioned, there's some tools that are there that are a little bit outdated. There's different ways that people want to access data and make decisions based on that data. But when we look at how we get there, it's certainly starting with the most critical importance as it relates to CPS and Heinen's, and that we agreed is formulating a data governance. Amii had mentioned the different challenges with understanding the definitions of data, the flow of data, and even understanding what cost really is. And so a data governance team is critical to an organization to make sure that they get started on the right path, that everything, the roles and responsibilities are defined, who owns the data, what the definitions. And so the KPI or the data governance is the first part of Heinen's roadmap. And as you flow through the roadmap and look at these different other areas of the roadmap, each one of them have a different goal associated with them. From a documentation perspective, we wanted to make sure, or sorry, let me go back to data governance. From a data governance perspective, one of the major goals of the data governance team was to actually have it as a cross-functional team. So this wasn't somebody just from IT, or this wasn't somebody just from the corporate office. You know, it had to be a cross-functional team because each team member knows their area of the business and really understands the reason behind that data and the data coming out of the system. So that was really important for a goal for the data governance team for formulating that team in the beginning. And that team will start out certainly small because we're just getting started with the data governance. And then as the data governance starts to get defined and we start building that momentum for a data governance team, the team can get bigger, and then they can probably meet less often than in the beginning. So in the beginning, there's going to be a lot of meetings. You're just building the foundation of the house for data and analytics. And as you start to get things moving, then the less meetings that you'll have to have and the more team members so that we have more input, but at least the framework will be defined. From a documentation perspective, it was all around the how and why of source systems and what they were used. There's a lot of different systems. As in many organizations, there's lots of line of business systems. So why do those systems exist? What's the data in the source system? How do we use that data? How do we understand it? The nuances of the features and functions, the data flow, and even the business rules around those systems is important to understand and to document. CPS, we use a product called NetSuite, which is a cloud ERP system, and talking to our data architect and doing our kind of data governance and our own dashboards. There's a lot of business rules that are just kind of understood in the system and understood by the owner of the system, but not understood across the organization. So it's important to understand and document your source systems and why you guys have them. From a data management and access, the goals were really to create an easy to manage tools. As Amii said, the IT department is tapped and they have a limited amount of resources, as most organizations do. So how do we make it easier to manage the data and store the data and get access to the data? All very important goals to define, and really what tools are there available on the market today that may not have been available 10 years ago to make that job that much easier. Lastly, hitting on a goal of data exploration is really just around giving users an easier way to access data. A lot of the data being accessed today is through Excel or offline reports, and it's not real time, and it's not allowing you to explore with the speed of thought, and meaning that as you think and you're looking through the data, there are different thoughts that are spurring in your mind about different ways of looking at your data or different ways of looking at product or customer. And so we want to create this new roadmap and this new environment where data can just be explored without boundaries. Remove all the Excel-based reports, provide real-time access or near real-time access to data, and give users that ability to be their own data steward or their data analyst, as Amii said, to those power users that really want to dig into cost and dig into the other areas of the business. I'll turn it over to Amii to talk a little bit about change management and training.
Yeah, I think, as Justin mentioned, there were a lot of interviews that helped to develop this roadmap. And a lot of feedback that we heard from over 70 associates across the organization. And the desire was strong from all of them to have easier access to data. But that's the very end of this roadmap. So from a change management perspective, it is extremely important that we have open communication, transparency, and discussions across the business around our path and how we're going to get there, because I think that a lot of team members want a new solution now, and it's going to be important to walk them through the reasons why it's going to take a little bit of time to get to our new solution, because we really, really want to put some effort in to make sure that solution is strong, actionable, and provides exactly what we need for this business. And so change management across the entire length of our roadmap implementation is going to be extremely important to keep our teams active and informed as part of the process along the way and get them excited towards our end goal. And then overall, there's a lot of training to be done. There is a desire for data literacy out across the organization, as I mentioned, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's ready to go with new tools when we hand them over. So we'll be taking some opportunities as we move towards our end goal of easier data access to look at some of the gaps that exist across the company when it comes to pockets of knowledge where we have some opportunity to train up a bit and cross-train, and then really look at where we have our senior leaders of data, and do we have enough of them? Are they placed around the company appropriately? And does everyone here at Heinen's know who to go to get their questions answered? So I think along this entire journey, we'll have to have a focus on both change management and training as an organization to get to a successful implementation.
Excellent, thanks, Amii. And I think it was critically important that that change management and training is throughout the entire roadmap, because communication and making sure everyone aware of where we're going is really important. And your roadmap may be a little bit different. You may have different points. You may already be down your roadmap. So everyone's roadmap is going to be different, but really taking a step back, understanding your why is where we formulated and helped Heinen's with their roadmap plan. So as it relates to the webinar and all that have attended today, we do have an offer that we have our data architect here at CPS, and there's a lot of different topics he likes to talk about, and he's joined with us on the call today. His name is Chris Denisiak, and as we were thinking about everyone else's journey and where they're sitting at, whether that's data access and management, governance, literacy, even your strategy and the tools that you're using, we want to make sure that everyone has access to our data architect, Chris, and that you can really talk to them about any one of these. So if you are interested in this offer and having that conversation, you can always email us at info@clearprocesssolutions.com. I want to thank Amii for presenting today and sharing her story with us. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Heinen's here in Cleveland and Chicago, definitely go to their stores, because it is a fantastic place. They really do focus on their employees and providing that service in store. So I want to thank you, Amii, for your time today.
Thanks so much, Justin, for inviting me to be part of this discussion today. And I'm hoping that we'll get a few questions out from the participants that have joined us here on the webinar. You can enter your questions in the Q&A if you have any.
We'll have one final minute here for any other questions. If you don't have any questions today, you can always email us at info@clearprocesssolutions.com, and we can make sure Amii answers any additional questions. Okay. Well, we appreciate it. For everyone that doesn't know who Clear Process Solutions is, we're going to cover just a little bit about our company. You're more than welcome to stay. And again, Amii, thank you for your time today. Okay, so for those of you that are stayed, just a quick introduction to Clear Process Solutions. We were founded in 2013. We have clients in over 20 different states, employees in 8 different states. We're a completely virtual-based company. We are product and vendor agnostic, meaning that we really focus on your business goals and objectives and the results that you're trying to achieve before recommending a tool for you. Our clients are in, and our customers are in multiple industries all across the US here. And there are a lot of name brand companies and customers that are really looking to achieve some top line growth or bottom line profits. From our expertise perspective, our three areas of really main focus and expertise is in data and analytics, as we talked to Heinen's today, our business process automation, which includes enterprise workflow and RPA, or robotic process automation, and then manufacturing digitization, really collecting data on the shop floor, getting paper off the shop floor, and digitizing the manufacturing processes. When you look at those three different buckets and kind of what those span, it covers everything from strategy around road mapping and governance to the actual execution of creating dashboards or movement of data or enterprise or department automation, to even quality tracking work instructions. So we both, about our company is we're both a strategy company and an execution. So we can formulate the roadmap and the governance plan, but also execute on it. From a partner perspective and the technology partners we choose to partner with in our areas of focus, they have to really meet these three key criteria. First and foremost, they have to be in Gartner's Magic Quadrant or Forrester Wave report. These are leading researchers in the IT industry on the market. And with those researchers, those quadrants, those wave reports really tell you the top technology partner for the different technology areas. And there are a lot of different areas. And again, we're only focused on three, but there are a lot of areas, and definitely those are where we start when we look at who we want to partner with from a technology perspective. Next, it has to be vetted and used by multiple CPS customers with verified results. It's important to understand that that it has been verified, that the technology, that it is working, that it is adding value to the organization. And the most important for our company is what's a little bit different around us is that it has to be a low-code application platform. And the reason we say that is that it adds value, time to value for your business. We're able to do things faster, or you're able to do things faster with these technology platforms. So that is critical, that it doesn't take 12 months or a year to implement a solution, that these are solutions that can be implemented in a rapid time, providing rapid results for your organization. Again, we talked about the engagement model, but going into a little bit more detail, all looking at trying to drive results for your organization. From a strategy perspective, you heard about our sync and how we provide that clarity for a roadmap. And that was all through Heinen's story today. With the other two areas that we focus on, proof of values and really proving the value of technology, making that unknown to a known, and really understanding what it's going to take for your company to implement this technology, the cost, and what the value of it is before spending a large amount of dollars on a project, or how we're introducing these technologies to all of our customers. We want to make sure that we don't just dive in and look for one big spend and not understand the value. So we always take a step back. We go through these proof of values. Usually they're anywhere from 40 to 80 hours. We're able to prove that the technology, you're going to get the results that you're looking to achieve. And then we go into the actual implementation. From a center of excellence team, there are a lot of different ways of bringing organization and bringing focus on innovation to your company. And we think that a center of excellence team is the way to do that. Having a day-to-day focus, your day-to-day job is on automation and innovation, will lead to bigger results and bigger impacts and a competitive advantage than to somebody's maybe part-time job or quarter of their job is focused on automation. So building up these teams, whether their center of excellence team is in enterprise workflow or robotic process automation or data and analytics, we think having that team that has a focus on innovation and automation will drive and help align to your business goals and objectives, which you're looking to achieve as an organization, and then how you're going to get there. From an execution standpoint, we talked about our technology platforms that we partner with, and really it's just around leveraging platforms, not programmers, to reduce your cost and also at the same time increase productivity throughout your organization. And CPS, from an execution standpoint, we have a unique offering on the market called Business Process Managed Services. And this is around a long-term partnership that gives preferred rates versus your traditional high time and material type rates. These agreements are agreements that we have with many organizations that are both helping drive digital transformation through projects or helping support them on existing platforms or tools that they've purchased in the past. So I want to thank you again, everyone, for joining. Visit our website at clearprocesssolutions.com or email us at info@clearprocesssolutions.com. Appreciate your time and thank you for joining us today.